A few years ago, I spoke up against bullying in our schools, not only because bullying is wrong, but because it's dangerous. It doesn't just hurt feelings, it threatens lives, and it takes lives of our children. In just the past 2 years, 9 students at Pascal High School, the school in my neighborhood, have committed suicide. 9 lives lost, 9 lives no longer walking the halls of a Fort Worth ISD school. Much like my speech from the council dais, I'm speaking out again today against bullying. Unfortunately, the bully today is not some schoolyard punk. It's our very own Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick. He's not here to listen or learn. He's here to threaten and to intimidate. Dan Patrick is here to pick up cheap political points by demeaning the value of our kids here in Fort Worth. I was stunned yesterday to read about the Lieutenant Governor's fake outrage and a press release from that filled with patent. Let me start over on that. I was stunned yesterday to read about Lieutenant Governor's fake outrage and a press release filled with patent falsehoods about a policy that was adopted with extensive public input in 2011. That was 5 years ago and 2 superintendents ago that this policy that the Lieutenant Governor is so outraged over was adopted. Fort Worth Public Schools have been doing just fine establishing policy and adopting guidelines to provide local school kids with a healthy learning environment where they are treated with fairness and respect. Now Dr. Scribner has provided guidance about the implementation of the district's 2011 non-discrimination policy. I'm proud of the work that Dr. Scribner and the entire Fort Worth ISD School Board have been doing. They have acted inclusively and without controversy up until now. As Dr. Scribner said about the guidelines he set forth, I think they provide educators with the ability to make all the students more comfortable and confident in the learning environment. So the Lieutenant Governor is not coming to Fort Worth to resolve any problems today. He's coming here to cause them. Dan Patrick, who says he's for local control in our school districts, is out of bounds in thinking he has standing here today. He is intentionally picking a fight at the expense of Fort Worth kids and their parents and their teachers. He sees personal political gain in trying to tear us apart. I would like to think that the Lieutenant Governor doesn't see the harm in what he's doing. I would like to think he doesn't understand that kids who are struggling with their identity, who already wonder how and if they will fit into the world, will hear and understand the hostility and hate implicit in his appearance here today. I know better though. We all know that Governor Patrick is a smart man and a professional communicator. He is keenly aware of the impact of his words today. That is why I needed to speak out again, to speak up on behalf of the Fort Worth kids and their parents and their teachers and staff who love them. A bully like Dan Patrick can't go unchallenged. He is wrong. He is here to do harm for his own political gain. And he'll get plenty of attention from all of you here and the coverage while he's doing it. I want school kids who hear Dan Patrick today and hear what he says to know that someone has stood up for them. All the people behind me, all the people here at the Fort Worth ISD have stood up for those kids today when they hear divisive leaders like Dan Patrick go on and on. I want them and I want their parents to know that the selfishness and divisive leaders, they'll come and go. They rise and fall. We overcome these sad, selfish leaders by sticking together, caring for one another, and loving one another. Tonight's school board meeting will celebrate and recognize a group of accomplished athletes and scholars, and that is something worthy to celebrate. Pride and respect is what our students need from their leaders. I want every student to know that their school board, their administration, and their teachers, and that their entire community is prepared to stand by them when outsiders bring their division and their self-interest. Thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it on to the chair of Equality Texas. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Rudner, the chairman of the board of Equality Texas. The Lieutenant Governor loves to stir up hatred for political purposes, but his hatred comes at a high cost. For transgender students who are bullied every day, his hatred is a mean-spirited attack on their value as human beings. For the state, it puts at risk over $6 billion in annual school funding. The Lieutenant Governor should get out of people's bathrooms, and he should get out of school board meetings where he doesn't belong. And instead, he should pay some attention to the state's broken foster care system and school funding and other important state issues. Picking on children is a new low, even for our lieutenant governor. School districts throughout the state have experienced crisis after crisis. When districts have dealt with funding shortfalls, falling test scores, scandals with administrators cheating and going to jail for cheating on test scores, buildings falling down, and other issues, our lieutenant governor is nowhere to be seen. It is sad and inhumane that the only time we see the lieutenant governor at a school board meeting is when he seizes the chance to pick on transgender children who simply want to use the bathroom in peace. A lieutenant governor who preaches about local control should respect the decision of the Fort Worth Independent School District and cities like Rockwall, where no one is interested in the brand of hate the lieutenant governor is selling. The policy about which we're here today is not a new policy. It was adopted years ago. The superintendent has merely drafted regulations implementing an already existing policy. The only news here is that the lieutenant governor has decided to pick on transgender kids, using them as a political football. Equality Texas commends the Fort Worth Independent School District for issuing guidelines which are consistent with federal law. By fueling hysteria and creating panic where none need exist, the lieutenant governor appeals to the worst chapters of our history, in which discrimination runs rampant and understanding and compassion are absent. Transgender students, like transgender adults, don't want to cause any problems. They simply want to use the bathroom when the need arises. The lieutenant governor's proposal would cause Texas to violate federal law, as defined recently by the Fourth Circuit and yesterday by our nation's Attorney General, and would put our school funding $6 billion a year at risk. It would ultimately cause for our state the economic chaos now being suffered by the state of North Carolina. The lieutenant governor's demands that we should violate federal law are not only dangerous and economically risky, but they also demonize transgender students, many of whom are forced to drop out of school because of the constant bullying and aggression that they face. Equality Texas calls upon our state leaders to expend our state's resources on solving real problems and improving public schools, rather than putting the funding for public schools at risk in a cruel and futile attempt to deny equality for all. Thank you.
We'll go ahead, Steve and I will go ahead and take a couple of questions. Does anyone have anything?
For folks who may not have an ideological difference, but they may just be, something like this may just bore you. What would you say to someone who's just sort of on the fence? They don't necessarily, they don't feel strongly one way or the other.
I would say for a parent in Fort Worth who expresses that concern, I would remind them that the policy that we're here about today has been in place for 5 years. For the last 5 years, transgender children have been using the restrooms in the Fort Worth Independent School District appropriate for their gender expression. The world hasn't ended. There have been no incidents. There's been no harm. There will be no harm tomorrow. The real harm that we should be focusing on is what happens to a transgender kid who finds himself or herself unable to use a restroom during the school day for fear of being assaulted and bullied. And those children who drop out as the result. Those are the kids that we should be worried about. The rest of our kids have been fine and will continue to be fine.
Okay, do we have any other questions from someone legitimate?
So we're here today to answer questions from the media.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions?
Tammy?
Could you ask the question again? Okay, so the board in response to the Attorney General, who yesterday or a few days ago indicated he'd like Target to leave the state, let me say this. The Attorney General should read the opinion rendered by the Fourth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals on this exact issue within the last month, which made clear that not only what the Fort Worth Independent School District is doing is consistent with the law, but that it is required by law. And a failure of the state of Texas to abide by the law will imperil all of the state's school education funding. It's not a choice, it's not an interpretation. The courts have ruled.
How is this being handled across Texas? Right now, the floodlight is on Fort Worth ISD.
I don't have the answer to that. I'm sorry. I don't know the answer to that.
Does Fort Worth serve as a model for one way or another?
For all school districts in the state, for all school districts in the country, I would say the law is clear. The federal government, which provides federal funding, has spoken yesterday through the Attorney General. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled. You know, folks, I want to tell you something. Let's make some news. Transgender kids are kids. Transgender people are people. Transgender women have been using the women's room. Transgender men have been using the men's room. Transgender boys have been using the boys' room. Transgender girls have been using the girls' room. And the world will continue to spin as it has been spinning. There is no news here. The news of the day is that our lieutenant governor has decided to pick on an already bullied group of kids for political gain. That's the news of the day. That's the only news of the day. It is shameful and it's despicable.
Anything else? All right. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.